Hello and thanks for joining the Thursday edition of Journalist Hangout. I am Veronica Danikboy. The Presidential and National Assembly elections are just 36 days away. How ready are you for the all-important polls and others to follow? Today on the program, Buhari vows to renegotiate salaries of workers above the 30,000 naira proposed minimum wage as Rwani heads a technical committee. Army makes big push against Boko Haram, takes control of Baga. And later on the show, Governor Shettima prioritizes education infrastructure despite fragile peace. I will be hanging out with Babajide Kolade Otitoju and Ismail Omikbido. Gentlemen, thanks for coming to the show. Journalist Hangout starts now. Let us begin with this quote. We anticipate that after the new minimum wage has been passed into law, we will be going into negotiations for salary review for all the workers who are already earning above the new minimum wage, end quote. That statement by President Muhammadu Buhari is the climax of the new twist into the ongoing agitation for new minimum wage for Nigerian workers. President Buhari, who made the commitment in Abuja at the inauguration of the Technical Advisory Committee on the implementation of an increase in the national minimum wage, said an upward review of pay for workers is necessary despite the prevailing fiscal challenges in the country. According to the president, the technical committee chaired by a renowned economist and financial expert, Bismarck Rwani, will advise government on how to achieve smooth implementation of the wage increases. With 1 month to complete its deliberations and submit its recommendations, we hope this will assuage the fear of workers. Jide, what do you make of the climax to this statement? And do you think that this would assuage the fear of workers, saying that they're going to the president was saying we will be going into negotiations for salary review for all workers?
Yes, you know, one reason the new minimum wage would drive up the expenditure profile of the government is because you now have to do a kind of graduated increase in salaries, because once you begin to pay someone 30,000 naira from 18,000, it then means that his own bosses, his seniors, those he met in the service, he would level up with such people or even begin to earn higher than them. So you then need to, on a graduated basis, add to the salaries of such people. That's what usually happens. So from the minimum wage, everyone will benefit, because you have to keep moving other people up, so that those that you have increased their wages in line with the minimum wage agreement will not now suddenly begin to earn higher than their bosses. So that is what the president is talking about. It has to happen. Any year that you increase minimum wage, that happens, because you have to now add to the salaries of other people, so that these ones, the junior workers, the lower rung of the ladder, will not now catch up with those ahead of them. So that is the point that the president was making. Just as I said yesterday, it's inevitable that government must increase minimum wage. It's a constitutional matter. You know, it's backed by law. There's no way you can escape. So hearing theories that, oh, government is trying to delay, government has no plan to pay, government, whatever people in government say, one inescapable fact is that they must pay this minimum wage.
They must.
They must pay. Because if you do not pay, then you have contravened the Constitution. You've gone against the letters of the Constitution. And no responsible government would want to do that. I know that for the Buhari regime, it is difficult. This tripartite committee was instituted on November 16, 2017. So 1 whole year. In fact, For months, they didn't even inaugurate they did not, the president set up the committee, but it was not inaugurated. They did not begin to sit. So we wasted so much time. And then we wasted months, negotiation, governors refusing to commit themselves. You know, Labour is in the beginning said it wanted 66,500. That was after they found the average, the median, between what ULC, the rival labor union, and the NLC was asking for. They achieved a kind of convergence at 66,500. But in the fullness of time, it became clear to Labour that, look, there's no way that these fellows in government and even those in the private sector can pay 66,500. So reality dawned, and gradually they began to come down and come down and come down. But still, we find a situation in which governors were reluctant. It is now because NLC has been insistent that governors who are openly opposed to 30,000 naira minimum wage would be opposed in the polls. We are now seeing governors coming out, especially governors gunning for second term. We are seeing the Lalongs of this world saying we can pay. I'm ready to pay. We are seeing the Kebbi state governor saying, no, I'm ready to pay.
But some other states are saying that they cannot meet up, and so they are looking at the 22,500 because...
A lot of the governors who are extremely opposed to this idea are on their way out. People like Abdulaziz Yari. Yari is on his way out. He knows that he has only a few months left. Governors who know that they need a second term, they've been careful. I'm telling you, check the papers in the last few weeks. You will see the consistency with which governors are coming out to say, I can pay. I can pay over 30,000. Some are even saying I'll pay 32. They are committing themselves now.
Because it's an election saying they can pay 44 or something.
It's politics, because once Labour begins to tag you as an enemy of the masses, enemy of the workers, if you are not careful, you may not be re-elected. So it's inevitable. We are getting nearer there. The National Assembly will convene on January 16. So the ball is now temporarily off Buhari's court. Labour now has to begin to lobby National Assembly to ensure that the process is not stalled. Once it's before the National Assembly, then pile the pressure so that they can come up with an act of parliament that will make this the new minimum wage law.
All right, Ismail, let's get a feel of what you make of this negotiating salary or the salary review. Some have interpreted it as a slash of salaries for those that are already receiving above the 30,000 naira benchmark.
That was, in fact, yesterday I was in the office. I was trying to, debate with one of my bosses that my understanding of what the president is saying, in the public service, there are some agencies of government whose salary structure are actually slightly above the national minimum wage. Agencies like FRS, NCC, several of them. My thinking, I don't know if that is what the president meant, but my thinking was that probably they want to tamper with those salaries. However, I'm also proposing that rather than tamper with those, because there were reasons for making those salary structures different from the normal civil servants because of the kind of work they do and to encourage them to do better. I'm proposing that rather than tamper with such salaries, why don't we review what political office holders earn? Because the truth is that they earn more than virtually everybody. And both the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, and even the incumbent have always argued in the past, that governance structure is too expensive, it's large.
Yes.
In fact, at some point, before Jonathan's inauguration in 2011, a committee was set up, headed by T.Y. Danjuma, where they proposed to him to reduce the number of ministries, reduce the number of ministers, so as to reduce cost of governance. Unfortunately, when he took over, what we had was that, in fact, he even increased the number of ministers. So if we agree that cost of governance is high, I think we should start looking at how to cut down what political office holders earn. And I believe very strongly that if that is done, it will also reduce the price. Price in the sense that most of those who go to the National Assembly today are actually not going there because they want to serve. They are going there because of the perks of the office. And so probably when we reduce it, we now begin to get credible persons who are willing to offer selfless service to the country.
But what do you see that, can that happen?
It can. Why not?
Because this has been raised several times.
Yes.
Cut costs.
It can happen. You know, it all boils down to the leadership. I want to believe very strongly they have always had a way of blackmailing each other. If tomorrow the executive comes up with a proposed bill to propose amendment to the current salary, this wage and salary, I think it has a commission, wage and salaries commission. Now, if the president proposes a bill towards that to ask for a cut in what political office holders earn, I'm sure most Nigerians will support it. And so the National Assembly will be blackmailed into having no justification but to do that. If you recall, in 2015 when they came in, if you recall, in 2015 when they came in, the president and his vice president and some governors were announcing a cut in their salaries, if you recall very well. And if you remember very well, if you check the budget, in response to that, National Assembly had to cut down its own budget too. They had to cut down its own budget because of the public outcry. So I believe very strongly that if the president wants to drive this, it will sell. On their own, they may not want to accept it, but I'm sure Nigerian masses will force them to accept it. And beyond that, apart from that too, what is the sense in having 40, 50, 200 essays? All these people collect salaries from the government. So I think that if we cut down all those weights, we may not even need to tamper with the salaries of these workers who are genuinely offering service to the country. This is my own take on that.
Well, Jide, earlier you talked about the ball, shifting off the presidency's or the president's table now, and that the NLC has to now begin to lobby the National Assembly and pile pressure. How will this work out? What do you envisage if that is the way it has to go now?
Yes, because the National Assembly has the power to approve the minimum wage. At the stage in which it is now, the tripartite committee has already come up with a draft bill for the National Assembly. All they need to do is look at it, deliberate upon it, get stakeholders to offer their opinions and all that, and then go ahead and say, okay, we've given our approval to this new minimum wage bill. Once that is done, it becomes legal. The president cannot do anything about it at that point. So it becomes legal. So that is why I'm saying that what Labour needs to do now is to begin the process of lobbying the National Assembly so that this process can be hastened, that they don't delay unnecessarily for maybe the incoming administration, to inherit. That is if Buhari is not re-elected. This whole process can actually end before May 29. So that is the pressure that they need to exert. You can see that President Buhari has moved beyond this point by setting up that committee. That committee, the Rewane committee, will also help them look at areas in which they can generate alternative sources of funding that will help find the funds to pay this minimum wage, because it's inevitable. The president even said it yesterday. He said, look, the issue is not whether we will pay minimum wage or not. It's non-negotiable. We will pay a new minimum wage. He said that, you know, he said that. So now they have to find a way. How do we do this thing? Do it seamlessly in a manner that will not bring rancor and a manner that will please all the stakeholders. So, because the organized private sector had been complaining that, look, we've gone through the process of the tripartite committee. Why are you delaying this process?
Yes, we'll continue on this when we return from this break. Do stay with us. You're still watching the Thursday edition of Journalist Hangout. And before we went on the break, Jide, you were trying to make a point.
Yes, that it is the National Assembly that all eyes will be on now, because the ball is now in their court. Labour has to pile pressure to ensure that the process is quickened at the level of the National Assembly. And once the National Assembly passes that bill into law, then it becomes fait accompli. That is what Labour is confident about, that it is, from what has transpired in the last few days, it is, they have every reason to believe that government is sincere. Government has reached the point now that one can say that they are ready to pay. You see, when we talk about government, the tripartite committee, as agreed upon by Labour Convention, is talking about the federal government, not the state. It recognizes the federal government. Buhari only behaved like a true Democrat by saying governors from the 6 geopolitical zones should be carried along. But you see that from the beginning, the governors were reluctant. Even if you read the interview of Amapepu, the governors were stalling. They refused to send in their own memoranda and all that, at least their own positions. But in the end, the government is seen as an entity, and that entity is represented by the federal government. So you can see that that's why the president is the one driving this whole process. They just have to queue behind him. Once it is agreed, that's our constitution says there shall be one minimum wage. Once the president lets the process sail through, I mean, supports the process wholeheartedly and it sails through, then we have a new minimum wage and you are obligated to pay. So what they should be doing now is, as the federal government has initiated its own moves to see how it can pay. But Buhari said, look, we have accommodated it in the 2019 budget. What the states need to do now is to look inwards. How do we get to pay? And I keep saying that if some states can pay, those states, and some of the states that can pay are not necessarily rich. Or those states are poor states. You can't tell me, for example, that Katsina is a rich state. But Masari has never owed salary. In fact, outstanding pensions that Masari inherited, he has paid. This is a fact, verifiable. And there are states too, small states too, that are able to pay. Gombe is one of those states. In fact, Gombe was among the first to say, look, I can pay 56,000 minimum wage. Perhaps
the sustainability of these payments is what they are looking at, where they wouldn't have to be waiting on handouts.
They have to look inwards. They are carrying a lot of dead weight. They have a lot of redundant public servants that they really do not need. But because people would rather play politics about things that affect you and I, affect our well-being, they are reluctant to take the big decisions that will ensure that this problem is solved once and for all. They don't want to rise size. They don't want to even send packing workers that they do not need. I've said before that I met a governor of a North Central state who told me that he reduced political appointees by 1,500. He still has 1,000. And I told him, Your Excellency, you can go further. He said, if I go further, they'll move against me. So a lot of those people, especially those of them that they flood the local governments with, are people that you don't need. That is where the governor of Kaduna State is different.
Yes.
Because he has found the courage to look in the direction of the local government and kick people that are not needed out. He has found the courage to say, oh, a lot of you district heads, we don't need you district heads, and he has sent them packing, including Professor Ango Abdullahi. So it takes courage to be able to take such big decisions. That's what a lot of our governors are not ready to do. And I've said that Tinubu was approaching re-election, approaching 2003 re-election, but he still had the courage to right-size the Lagos civil service. It was a real tug of war at that time, but he made sure that he did it. He could have said, they will not re-elect me, let me not do it. Right. But what did we see? Civil servants voted against him in Ward C here. But he still didn't stop Tinubu from winning the election. So we need those big decisions. Leaders should be able to take big decisions.
All right, let's look at Bismarck Rewani's role now. He has his work cut out for him, Ismail, especially with advising the government on the consequential increases for other categories of workers. But then, can this consequential wage adjustments happen in a manner that will not have an adverse effect? Is there a way, despite the advice or despite having this technical committee?
Well, the thing is, one thing about Nigeria, or Nigerian leaders and government, is that you always craft beautiful proposals for them, embedded with beautiful recommendations. But sometimes they even lack the political way to implement them. I just give you an example of what happened before 2011. Everybody was saying, oh, cost of governance is high, yes, blah, 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 blah. And the man said he was willing to, look at it. He set up a committee by himself. And the committee recommended that, look, first, reduce number of ministers, do this, do that. But in spite of the recommendations, what do we have? So, if you have been following Bismarck Rewani, he's been speaking on this matter. And
if you could just hold a thought, we have Sunday on the line calling from Niger State. Welcome to the program. Go ahead with your contribution.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm Sunday from Kontagora.
All right.
Niger State. I like your discussion today about the minimum wage that President Muhammad Buhari said that he's going to renegotiate the salaries of those collecting above minimum wage. Because we have agencies like NCC, Federal Revenue, NPA, and others. They are collecting far more than the minimum wage, whereas others collecting below, like the NIPSI and others, and INEC. So I like the giant side that the president is taking. And here in Kontagora, we love him so much. And we are going to vote for him massively. I'm Igbo by tribe, but we love him here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy.
So as I was saying, I believe in Rewani, but the thing is, it is one thing to make proposals, it is one thing to make recommendations, it is another thing, to follow. Whether the increment will have adverse effect or not, it certainly will have. Once the law comes into effect, even before workers start collecting the new minimum wage, their landlords will increase, the rent.
Food prices.
Food prices will go up. Look, you can imagine just those periods we had this exchange rate fluctuation. Just vegetable. The vegetable seller will tell you, you don't know, say dollar don't go up. And I asked one of them jokingly, I said, come, what has dollar got to do with the
vegetable?
If it's imported.
So it is that it will have adverse effect. It's inevitable. It will have, but how do we cushion it? It's what government should be looking at. I recall that in the past, once they do it, they will come up with this. Okay, they buy buses to help transportation, but you find out that those things don't usually last. If you go to Abuja today, find out the buses that were procured under Yaradua, and even if the scheme is still running. None. So our problem has always been implementation. We have a lot of beautiful recommendations to help government work. And the thing is, even the governors themselves, they should begin to look at other sources of generating revenue outside this they are going to Abuja to, to collect money every month. Zamfara. Unfortunately, we are always using Zamfara. Zamfara, that state is sitting on gold mine. Both Nigerians and foreigners are mining gold illegally in that state, as we speak. So what stops the state government from collaborating with the federal government to find a way of exploring those things? It will certainly generate revenue. It will create jobs for its, teeming youth.
Mm. All right, Jide, your final word on this before we move forward.
Yes, what I want to say is that this has taken us too long. I can't remember us having to stay on a matter this long. And the lesson is we need to start earlier, because the minimum wage during Yaradua's time, they actually kick-started the process earlier. It began even before Jonathan came into office, and by 2011 we had a new minimum wage. So we should start earlier, and we should in future not delay this thing the way we have done, to the point that we are approaching elections and such a critical decision, we have to make it.
All right. To the next topic now. The great Confucius once said that, quote, "Our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall," end quote. American sports icon Vince Lombardi put it succinctly thus: "The greatest accomplishment is not in never falling, but rising again after you fall," end quote. Despite conflicting reports about whether or not the fishing town of Baga in Borno State fell into the hands of Boko Haram insurgents, the Nigerian armed forces have retaken it. Apart from mounting relentless attacks to push back the insurgents in areas like Baga and Damasak, the military blocked some highways like the Maiduguri-Damaturu road to cut off further advances by the Boko Haram fighters. All we can do is wish them victory in this war to bring lasting peace to the area. A major boost for the military in its fight against insurgents, I must say, Ismail.
Yeah, I was elated when I heard the news. And I think just like the concluding part of your statement, we will always pray that it lasts. But having said that, I think the military, they must learn from the mistake of the past. I recall when we started celebrating our victory over Boko Haram, we always emphasize here that we should not go to sleep, because these guys have not been, fully defeated, and that they can stage a comeback anytime. But unfortunately, it appears we were complacent, and the result was, what we saw. Having said that, I think going forward, the Nigerian Army and the Air Force, there must be more synergy in their work operations, because I find it very absurd to hear that when Army are they are carrying out ground operations, sometimes they don't get the air support that is required, and most times when the air support comes, it's usually late. For example, like the Metele attack, for instance, it was after our soldiers had been killed that, the Air Force, went to, launch the attack. I find it very disturbing that the president has demonstrated every genuine sincerity in ending this war against Boko Haram. And how do I mean? The chief of staff is from Borno. The national security advisor is from Borno. The chief of army staff is from Borno. The chief of air staff, though he's not from Borno, but he's married to a Shua who is from Borno, and he has also spent about 15 years, he spent about 15 years of his life in Maiduguri. Now, having all these people, one would expect them to work together to ensure this war, is brought to an end. But unfortunately, these men who are supposed to be president's men, some of them, especially within the presidency, are also fighting to undermine themselves. And when you don't have a synergy, you will discover that you will not be able to achieve your aim. You will not be able to achieve your target.
Perhaps this is why people are asking that an overhaul of security chiefs.
We have called for it here before. I recall even last year, but from the president's body language, and apart from even his body language, the most recent interview he granted, he has said it clearly that he's not willing to change his service chiefs. Ordinarily, one would have expected that perhaps if we have new hands there, those ones may come with a new idea, but the commander-in-chief has told you clearly that he's not willing to change them. And so perhaps we'll go with what we have for now and pray that they take charge of the situation once and for all.
All right, Jide. Of course, obviously the army, the security operatives took charge of the operation and are saying that they have taken control of the
No, they are actually not telling us they've taken control. But we know that they've taken control. They didn't tell us that they lost Baga in the first place. So it's not possible for them to now come out and say we have retaken Baga. But we know, because we've been following what's been happening. Some people will ask all kinds of questions. But where you have 3 arms of the armed forces, working in the same area, it is not the army alone that can provide information, except for lazy journalists. It's not the army alone. Even residents of those areas, when they come into town, you can see terrified people running away. Eyewitness accounts. That's how some people got to know that Baga was in the hands of Boko Haram. Before Boko Haram actually released that video, where you saw them driving their gun trucks, and some of them were even patching tires inside the military base in Baga. So, but the truth is, we appreciate the industry of our soldiers, we appreciate their sacrifice. And they've risen to the occasion again by retaking this critical military base, from Boko Haram. Yes, mistakes had been made. Because before now, while I was in Maiduguri, Baga was attacked, but we repelled them. By the time they got back, they succeeded.
Couldn't respond.
So what the strategy of the enemy is to first attack the small military bases around the big military formation. That's what they've done around Damasak, done in other areas. So once they've attacked these little bases, they will now come for the bigger military formation. And our men and women in the armed forces must be aware that this is a strategy, because they've done it, and we've seen clearly that some of our military bases have literally even been wound up because of constant attack by these guys, especially in Borno North. So, but we are seeing some level of seriousness, because for Boko Haram to come close to Maiduguri, going to that, I know, you sense that there is danger.
Yeah.
And I was happy when the military decided to close the Maiduguri Gubio road, just to be able to ensure that they slow down the advance of these guys. The same, even the Maiduguri Damaturu road, they also closed. And they did the kind of covert operation just to be able to identify these guys and serve them justice. So it gives me hope. The areas where we have problems, like the Alagarno forest, very thick forest, around the Damboa area. Because Damboa is a big problem for the army because of the thick forest in that area. The Damboa Maiduguri Biu highway is the most dangerous in Nigeria, up till tomorrow. So People who are living in Biu, they have to go through Yobe State. For a journey of a few hours, you first go to Yobe State to get to your hometown because that area is not secure. We must keep working hard to keep that area secure, flush out these undesirable elements so that our people can have peace. We cannot continue to live with the threat that Boko Haram constitutes. And that's why I've been asking that the president should sufficiently arm the army. It's not, when people say, oh, why don't they use the weapons that they have? MRAP, big armies of the world, are recognized for the quality of the weapons that they have. When you have anti-mines, then your troops will be safe.
If you could quickly hold the thought, we have Sule on the line, calling from Kano. Welcome to the show. Go ahead with your contribution.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year.
Same to you.
You see, I am happy that Babajide was able to make it to the battlefield. I hope the Nigerian Air Force is not trying to take you away from journalism. Anyway, on a serious note, I just want Babajide to please do a kind job to Nigerians. You've been to this area. You have deep knowledge about this issue of insurgency. And the Nigerian army has fought rebellion in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, and has also fought in Gambia excellently well. These are more organized groups than even the Boko Haram. So please, even if your discovery is not something that you will share on air, please, could you please put your findings so that the Nigerian military could take a clue from what you have discovered? Because I can't understand how we cannot defeat these so-called insurgents. If we are able to do well in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in other places,
thank you.
Why can't we defeat this? Please, is there any economic or political angle to this issue? Are you able to find out something about these two items? If you are, please, even if it is not for public consumption, can you please make it? Write a memo to the Nigerian military.
All right, thank you, Sule.
Are my findings so that at least we can have peace in this country.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution.
The truth is, the Nigerian army is not as strong as the years when we fought in Liberia. Because some people were interested in regime change, they scaled down the number of troops that we had. Equipment got cannibalized. If I remember interviewing Marshal Lisa Doku, and he was telling me how deliberately the Air Force was crippled because they saw the Air Force as a threat after the first coup against Babangida late in 1985, which eventually, for which General Varsa and some Air Force officers were executed. So we reduced the army because Babangida felt that you do not need a large army in peacetime. So today we do not have the troop strength that we used to have. Some of the weapons that we had back then, we no longer have. You can imagine a country like Chad that we used to harass. Chad today is rated among the 10 best air force in Africa. Nigeria does not even number amongst the best air force in Africa. Egypt and Morocco, they have more F-16s than the Nigerian, all the aircraft that the Nigerian Air Force has. So when you compare what happened in Liberia, we had forests in which trees were as tall as 40 meters, yet our soldiers excelled. But you can't compare that era with now. If you check, I think it was Colonel Sani Saleh, who used to represent Kaduna Central in the Senate. Saleh, that he said at a public hearing that the army was deliberately weakened by people who wanted to sustain themselves in power. And he said that even trainings that soldiers used to have, that those trainings were stopped. These were the measures that weakened the army, made the army not as strong as it used to be. Now we are struggling. you know, to get back to where we used to be.
We need to strengthen them because we have a war.
Yes, now we were not expecting this kind of war to happen. Now we have this kind of war. We don't have the kind of weapons that we need. We don't have the troop strength that we need. Because, as I've said, we have never put up to 40,000 troops in the whole of the Northeast. So the enemy sometimes outnumber our troops, carrying the same weapons that they are carrying. So sometimes when we take actions, we must think of the future. All countries of the world, Uganda and the rest of them, their armies are well armed. They don't use the kind of weapons that we still use.
But we need to move from the past. We need to move forward.
That is the thing. For me, when people say we need to suggest, I suggested to the Chief of Army Staff when I met him in Maiduguri, and he accepted. He thanked me. I offer suggestions that why don't you do this? Big armies of the world have an aviation wing, which is called Army Aviation. And he said that they would love to, but of course funds and other issues.
Sadly, we can only hope that we win this war as soon as possible. But moving on now, according to the Yoruba people of southwest Nigeria, a tear-veiled eye preserves its function of sight. The nagging Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast has no doubt taken a huge toll on socio-economic lives of people in the region. But in the midst of the chaos and unrest, the Buhari state government has leveraged on the sector that can truly bring about transformation in the state by investing heavily in education. According to the state governor, Kashim Shettima, he wants to use education to change the narrative, hence his heavy investment in the sector. Let's hear from Governor Shettima how he is able to drive the dream.
Education, believe me, is the greatest game changer. If we truly want to live in this part of the world, if we truly want to transform our society, investment in education is an inescapable part. There's even a study conducted by Dr. Mairomandra that was presented in a TED Talk, where there is a direct correlation between maternal mortality rate and the level of education of our women. The maternal mortality rate in the Northeast is as high as 1,758. In the Northwest, it's as high as 1,203. In the Southwest, it's as low as 165 per 100,000 live births. And they trace it directly to education. So many factors make it absolutely necessary for us to invest in education. Because without education, we might as well forget about the future. And when you insist on excellence, Babajide, believe me, you will end up getting it. We believe that we should insist on excellence. We miss the agricultural age. We miss the industrial age. We are now in the post-industrial knowledge-driven age, and we can fly that chasm and learn at the other end. Remember, people are talking of going to the Mars. Virgin Galactic is going to the outer space now. They are talking of artificial intelligence, of biotechnology, of genetic engineering. While we are busy talking about restructuring, about resource control, is there any greater resource than the human resources, which when properly harnessed? The richest nations in the world are not resource endowed. South Korea, Singapore, so many nations, Japan. So I believe that education is one area that I am very passionate about, that I am crazy about. And mind you, sir, we inherited a total of 55,911 widows and 53,311 orphans, as per the Recovery and Peace Building Assessment conducted by the World Bank in partnership with the European Union and the Presidency. And these are official figures. The unofficial figures might probably be twice this number. And these orphans and widows, we either invest in them, train them, make them productive citizens, Or there will be the Frankenstein monsters that 10 years, 15 years down the line, that will consume all of us. So most of our investments are driven by our own self-interest. Because I don't want to live in any part of the world. I want to live and die in this part of the world. And I think education, I want to be remembered as one governor who saw education as the ultimate key. I want to be remembered as one governor who got married to the educational pursuits of our people.
Beautiful structures, I must say, well equipped. It's obvious that these structures are up to standard.
Right.
But then how will this change the narrative? Because this state has, several issues, Boko Haram, insurgency. How will this bridge the gap? Education, Ismail.
You see, each time I visit Maiduguri, as a matter of fact, I worked there before. I left there officially in 2005, but since then I've always visited. And I recall when Shettima was taken over in 2011, he made a passionate appeal to the Boko Haram fighters that they should give his leadership a chance. Some at that point listened, some dropped their arms, some refused. But each time I travel to Maiduguri, up to as recent as last month, I wonder how in time of crisis, the man has been able to put down all this infrastructure. Whereas states that don't even have never witnessed any violence, they have been unable to do it. There was one evening he was driving me around some of the schools, and I asked him what was the reason behind it. He said he wants to make private schools unattractive. Some of those most of those primary schools
are primary schools.
Air conditioners.
Yes.
They're equipped with air conditioners. And they are to be attended by children of the poor, the orphans, those who were orphaned by Boko Haram, including children of
CAC.
Including children of the masses, because like he just said, he said, look, education is the key. And I say it, and I want to say again, you cannot give what you do not have. Perhaps it's level of exposure, it's level of education.
It's what is driving this vision.
It's what is driving this vision, because before, in 79, we had a graduate as a governor, Goni. But by 1999, when we returned to, during our return to democracy, we had a diploma holder, late Kachala. And after him, we had a controversial one, whose certificate, educational qualification was in controversy before we have it. And as God will have it, is likely going to hand over to a professor.
Okay.
And I'm sure these guys will...
Let's have, Jide just came back from there and, give us your own perspective to all of what you saw.
When I went to Borno and I saw those schools, the first question I asked was, are these private schools? Because when you see the primary schools, even the sweet colors that they use to paint those schools, you will never agree that these are public schools. And then you see air conditioners. Beyond the air conditioners for every classroom, they still have ceiling fans. So the students will never feel hot. They will never feel hot.
The environment is conducive.
And they have 3 sources of electricity to ensure that there's electricity at all times. You had solar, you had inverter, and then public electricity. So I moved around, I said, are these public schools? But the signage will show to you that these are really public schools. And then you have multimedia means of instruction that ensures that learning is done through animation. That way, children will really enjoy learning. They want to come to school. When you see some of those schools, I hope we can see them again. When you see some of those schools and the things that they put on ground for children to have leisure, for children to enjoy, there's no way the children will not feel like going back to school. Every day, school will be pleasurable for children. And what he is trying to do is to ensure that he gets it right at primary level, because that is the problem of the North. And once you don't get it right at primary level, honestly, you are in trouble. Kashim shocked me by deciding to build mega school for children of Fulanis, Bororos, because he felt, look, they should not inherit the jobs of their parents, which is to do Megad. The Boro Fulanis are the most trusted in that part of the country when it comes to guiding houses. If they are told, look, nobody comes in, nobody will come in. They trust them exceedingly. Now, on a particular day, he went where they were building a school, and he saw that it was the children who opened the gate for him. He said, it happened the second time. He said, these people are trying to inherit their parents' jobs. This will not happen. He now began to entice their parents to release those children so that he can put them in a private school. He put them in a private school. You know, after some time, he decided that, okay, we can even build a mega school for this. When he had about 500 of them. And that's the way he has put children of orphans, because what those Fulanis are saying is, look, Boko Haram, they're stolen our cattle. So there's nothing to fall back on. You know, we'll hear from one of the engineers.
Yes, I think that's next in line. We spoke with one of the engineers handling the school projects for the Shettima administration in Borno State, Usman Tijani, who explained the modern facilities provided to make learning conducive for students and the pupils.
We have multiple projects anyway. Yeah, the one just behind us, as you can see, is a two-story building of 60 classrooms. And each of the classrooms has a capacity of about 40 students. So cumulatively, it's giving us a total capacity of 2,400 students. And the facility also has inbuilt toilet facilities. That is to say, during class hours, students doesn't need to go to the hostel area to attend to toilets. We have inbuilt toilet facility, which is a water system. So basically, this has regards to the classroom. And in front of the class, we have the administrative block, which is going to accommodate a minimum of 50 to 100 staff. And it has a conference hall, it has a boardroom, it has a canteen, and we have a sick bay, where in an event of, casual illness and what have you, the students will be admitted because they will be finally evacuated to any nearby hospital facilities.
The best schools I've seen anywhere I've been to, the best public schools that I've seen anywhere I've been to in Nigeria are in Borno State. This is something that I can bet with anyone. I've not seen public schools as beautiful as the ones that I saw in Borno. There is one that is going to be named after the wife of the vice president. I said, how can you tell me this is a public school? With all the facilities that they put there. You see the quadrangle, you will want to go back to school. We were not lucky to have this kind of beautiful schools. It feels like rolling back the years. And then
even some private schools today don't have
all of these facilities.
That is the thing.
And so maintenance and sustainability.
It happened in Rwanda now, when government made public schools attractive.
Yeah.
Enrollment in private schools dropped significantly. This is what this government is trying to do.
I hope parents will take advantage of
I
this.
think you were talking about maintenance. I think during his 2019 budget presentation, he revealed that the state was going to set up a Borno State mega school management board, specifically to manage it. And the target is to build 53 of those schools. So far, 40 have been built. And he said he was going to complete the remaining 13 before May 29.
So a lot of those schools are actually in progress.
Some have not been commissioned, even though they have not been commissioned, but they're already using them. In the 2019 budget, I think he has earmarked 2 billion for,
Look at the schools. For sprinklers, even at work, making the place green.
For the mega schools.
So, but then some parts of the state still witness pockets of, attacks.
Yeah, I think what he did deliberately, I think what the government did was to look for the most secure, relatively secured areas. They have one in Bama, they have in Gubbio, they have in Nganze, they have in Mongunu, they have in Awul. Biu, Shani, Magumeri, and even Goza. So what it deliberately, ordinarily, I'm sure he would have wanted to build in all the local governments.
He told me that those communities in
they have
Borno
decided to,
they cannot,
to choose only the secure,
those things.
the secure areas.
It's unfortunate. Once we have peace in Borno, then they can extend these things to every part. Local government like Kukawa, Guzamala, and the rest of them, they don't have peace. Malam Fatori, no peace. So you can't afford to go and build schools there because those children will not, even feel safe.
Yeah.
So that is the thing. And the good thing is that the man who is likely to succeed him is the man who is actually the architect of a lot of these projects. So the government is confident that he will even outperform him.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, that's all on Journalist Hangout. Join us tomorrow for another episode of the program. You can also watch Journalist Hangout on other platforms showing on the screen and on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. Our feedback channel is Journalist Hangout at tvcnews.tv. I'm Veronica Danit Boy. Bye for now. God bless Nigeria.